Hey, hey. Hello, everybody. Welcome to What's Next for Appraisal. We are so glad that you are here. We see lots of folks joining us, but I'm also glad to be joined today by a very special guest, Mr. Pete Crum. He is First American's Chief Appraiser. Hi, Pete. You're on
Hello,
mute.
how's everybody doing today?
We also have the ever so brilliant Evelyn Schulberger, Product Manager for ACI Sky Workbench. Hey, Evelyn.
Howdy, everybody.
We have such a fantastic session today. I am super excited. It is going to be a little bit different from the others that are in this series. Over the past few weeks, we have been collecting questions from appraisers about UAD 2.6, UAD 3.6, Workbench. What is this transition? What does it mean in practice? And so today, I will be asking some of the most common questions that we have received. These have been collected from our customer support team, from comments that we have on social media, emails that you've been sending us in, just asking these questions. So they are especially around the differences between today's 2.6 form-based experience and tomorrow's 3.6 report-based experience. So two very different things. Pete is here to help us answer from the appraiser and industry perspective, and Evelyn will help connect those answers back to Workbench and being how it's being built to support the new UAD 3.6 workflow. Before we jump in, a quick reminder, housekeeping, mic and video are disabled for this call, but please use the Q&A box at any time to post questions. We have an entire team on standby to answer your questions. They are bored, they're looking for work. So send them questions, send them everything that you have. And we will also review some at the end of the show here for some live Q&A. A reminder that all sessions are recorded and will be posted on our website, aciweb.com. So let's get into it. We created this special 5-part series because we've heard from so many of you that want clarity around Workbench, UAD 3.6, what these changes mean in your day-to-day work. Each session, we only have 30 minutes, so we want to make sure that they are focused. We're honing in on a specific topic or feature. In the last session, we gave a high-level look at Workbench and how it modernizes the appraisal workflow. But today, we're focused on one of the biggest changes coming into with this new era of UAD 3.6, and that is the shift from forms to reports. In our future sessions, we have a couple more lined up for you. We're going to cover progress visibility, connecting files and appraisal data, compliance tools, things that will help appraisers catch issues earlier and then move toward delivery with more confidence. Before we get into questions, I do want to give a quick update on where we are with Workbench and ACI's UAD 3.6 readiness. So last week, we did complete our demo with the GSEs as part of the verification process. They have us complete sample test cases, and then we also have to provide a live demo where they review our solution for you and then provide some feedback. So right now, we are working through that feedback that we received. It's really great feedback, and I think it will absolutely improve the experience for our appraisers. But we are looking forward to that verification coming here within the next couple of days. We're also finalizing appraiser readiness materials. So we have a step-by-step video and a guide that will be available on aciweb.com coming this Monday, along with additional training resources that are there for you as well. And our support team is fully trained and they are ready to help appraisers as they begin working in Workbench and preparing for UAD 3.6. All right, so let's get into today's topic. For years, appraisers have worked inside familiar forms. You know the structure, you know where that information lives. Even when an assignment is complex, that format is familiar to you. And with UAD 3.6, the industry is moving into a more dynamic report-based structure. The report is driven by property, the assignment, and the information that applies to that specific valuation. Some parts are going to still feel familiar, but there are other parts that are organized a little bit differently. And UAD 3.6 is more than just fields and updated labels. It really changes the way that appraisal information is organized, reviewed, and submitted. So that's what we want to talk through today, the difference very clearly show that for you with a 2.6 and a 3.6 appraisal side by side. And we're going to use questions that we have received from appraisers to explore what is changing, what you're likely to notice first, and how Workbench is being built to help guide the new UAD 3.6 workflow. And so with that, let's get into our first question. Special guests, are you ready?
Yes, as you said earlier, we're bored.
We
I
are
know,
ready.
yeah, right? Gotta keep you guys busy, keep you on your toes. All right, so one of the biggest questions that we keep hearing is obviously UAD 3.6. It's moving from forms to reports. So what does that actually mean whenever an appraiser is completing an appraisal assignment?
Yeah, I'm gonna give some 2 cents here first, Pete, and then I'll let your expertise weigh in since you are the appraiser. But I want to show you. You made a good point, Kim. What we haven't done before is do a side-by-side comparison of
Mhm.
what exists in ACI report today versus what you see in Workbench, because we know a lot of folks that do join the call, they're not active in Workbench, they're not filling out reports yet, and so we talk about differences. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to track, right? It's a little bit hard to follow along. So on my screen, I've got a 2.6, and you know what? That's a different one that I was working on. So let's do a new one and open up just a 1004. Nothing, no template, no nothing, just the default pick list order in here. So we'll open this up, and again, speaking to what you mentioned and highlighting the question, we talk quite a bit about dynamic fields, right? And I've
Mhm.
talked so much about field level validation. But what the heck does that mean? And so on here, we see a static structure. That is 2.6. We see every field is visible at once, right? Whether you're going to use it, check the box, throw an NA, none, whatever it is, you're going to see everything in here for every single property type, no matter what, because the form exists before data starts being introduced here before it matters. Then we go into Workbench, and we'll do the same thing. Let's just create a new order. Probably use that order today. We can just grab one of our 3.6. We're going to stick with URAR. And let's just see what the address suggestion gives us. I'm in Houston today, so we'll grab that. And now we have an order created and there's a little bit more here than just the form, right? What we're planning to build in Workbench is a lot more than just building out the form. But as I go through, we're going to stick to talking about the workflow here and highlight where that feels different in this case. And let's do them side by side so you can see. Now, I know
Wow.
that things got a little bit smaller on the ACI report side, on the desktop side, but I think, again, high level in speaking to what's different here, the very first thing that we can talk about when we say field level validation, or we talk about the conditionally required behavior of how Workbench is taking care of showing you the relevant fields. First thing, assignment reason. When I hit refi, I'm going to see this shifted to borrower name and owner name of public record because it's asking me the questions relevant to this assignment type, right? If I hit purchase, now I have a borrower, seller, and owner of public record. Again, that's a small one, right? That's a simple enough one to track. And over here, we see a borrower, owner of public record. Again, all of them are displayed all of the time. There's more nuanced sections, right? Like the site is one that I think, Pete and I have talked about quite a bit before, where there's more information that's going to need to be collected for that for 3.6 versus 2.6. But this is what we mean when we say, in the traditional workflow, every field exists always for you to go through. You see everything. But in Workbench, the workflow is responding to the assignment itself. Its report structure is being built dynamically from the data that you enter, which is why we say it's data, not a form. So Again, surfacing what's relevant instead of showing you everything all at once.
What a difference. What a difference to see these side by side. Pete, from an appraiser's perspective, what do you think will feel most different when appraisers first move from that 2.6 form on the left to the 3.6 report that's on the right?
Well, clearly, visually, these are two completely different things. So hands down, it's going to be really getting familiar with the new platform. That's going to feel like the biggest difference, I believe. I think that Workbench is really sort of light years apart from ACI Desktop. And what we appraisers, most of us have been using ACI Desktop for 20, 30 years, something like that. Workbench is it's just really a new animal, and it's almost kind of like comparing it like a BlackBerry to an iPhone 17. They're just two totally different things. Um, uh, but I think the conditionality also of the 3.6 report is going to take some getting used to. We're used to seeing,
Sure.
as Evelyn was pointing out, we're seeing it all in one shot with the 2.6 ACI desktop form, whereas the UAD 3.6 report, um, it's just not static. And the data requirements are going to change depending upon the characteristics of the subject, as Kim was saying before. And I'll also say that probably the sales grid is going to take a little bit of getting used to as well. There's a few more fields there, structured slightly different, but hands down, it's going to really be the platform.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Another question that we get pretty often is about the traditional appraisal forms. So, like, for example, will I still be able to use the traditional ACI forms for private work or non-GSE assignments like GPAR?
Can you still use those forms? Absolutely. In ACI report. Are those forms in Workbench yet? No. And then when I was just showing the create order process, you saw only 3 in there, right? It's just the
Mhm.
3.6 ones right now. And I don't believe it's been a secret at all. We've talked about the goal is to migrate everything over, but
Yeah.
as we introduce this, we also know that change is hard. And so we're limiting that right now to just 3.6 in Workbench, and then we'll migrate everything over as you've got some time under your belt to get some confidence working in Workbench.
Yeah. Thanks, Evelyn.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and desktop's not going anywhere, right? Like, our
Right.
plan, yeah. And understandably, nobody wants to work out of 2 systems. Totally get that. So, like Evelyn said, our goal is to migrate all of those, the 1004, the general purpose, right? 2055, none of those, that's not going anywhere. The big focus is on origination, UAD 3.6, but we get it. Those additional appraisal forms, those are still such a dominant part of the valuations industry that we are migrating those into Workbench. One thing at a time, though, obviously, our first
Mhm.
goal is to get verified and be able to get this out into your hands. And then we can start the process of moving everything over. But desktop will still be there too. So you can use it as a repository. You can keep your files there. It's still going to be there in the background for you. All right. Another question that we get often, so often, is cloning. So Evelyn's favorite topic. So, quote, I use cloning all the time now. Will I be able to
Sure.
clone one of my old 2.6 forms and use it to start a new 3.6 form? And I think there's a couple of different ways we can answer this, right? Like,
Yeah.
will cloning be a function that exists in Workbench? I think that's one thing that we can touch on. But then also, the 2.6 form is completely different from the 3.6 report. It's very difficult to compare the two because it's two completely different data sets. So really, no, those legacy forms, the 1004, the 2055, it's not apples to apples with the function and the formatting and the data that is required to make up a 3.6 report. However, we will have some functionality built into Workbench to help compensate for that. So, Evelyn, you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we have had conversations, and Pete, correct me if I'm wrong here, because you're a lot closer. We get to chat with our appraisers often, but you're doing it daily. Um, when we talk with them most, what we hear and what we're working to build towards is what's helpful about the cloning are the efficiency gains, right? And
Mhm.
there's a lot of data, even on this static form. And I know I'm just continuing to go through in Workbench and entering data so you can see how fields are changing and updating as we go through. But what's helpful is there's a lot of data. And again, we said this is static, you're always going to see it. It's helpful today to know what you don't need to fill out. The dynamic nature of it with Workbench makes things a little bit more challenging. So our plans do include default selections based on
Yeah.
property type, right? Those canned responses that are in there. But I do want to make sure expectations are level set. It's not going to be the same one for one. I cloned this. Now it's exactly the same over here, because what we don't want to do also is have that static data going through on multiple different report types that can tend to cause some issues. So the tools that make you more efficient, yes, those are on the roadmap, which again, canned responses, default settings. If you're in a specific market where you know you're only going to do this report type all of the time, we've got some things planned for you, but it is not exactly I cloned this report that I did for Chase last week, and now I just need to change the client lender name and we're good to go and re-sign it. It's not the same.
Well, I think that's an excellent point, Evelyn. And as product people, it is our responsibility to solve problems, and that's the
Right.
root of product management. It's not just to create products; it is to solve problems, right? So we need to get to the root of why is cloning. Why do appraisers clone? That's the problem
Sure.
that we need to solve. So, Pete, I'm going to pitch this over to you. Why do appraisers clone? Like why have they relied on cloning for so many years? Like what is that root that us as product people need to solve?
Well, I think they've relied upon cloning probably because that's what their supervisor taught them to do, or where that's how they learn to, you know, sort of become a little bit more efficient. But I think that when we're talking specifically about cloning, I think it's caused a whole host of issues for appraisers, lenders, consumers. Even sometimes appraisers find themselves in hot water with state regulators because they have cloned reports. They're not changing the data the way that it needs to be changed. So I personally don't think cloning is useful. I think cloning is a little bit of a naughty word. It is in my environment anyway, with the appraisers that I work with. We do leverage templates, and templates,
Sure.
they're really a much better solution than cloning, but they're probably not going to be ideal for 3.6 given the reporting conditionality. So I'm happy to know that ACI is going to be implementing some default settings and will help appraisers with efficiency that way rather than go back to the days of cloning or implement something like that. Because I think it's personally, a little bit dangerous um, just from a data integrity perspective.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And just to speaking to giving appraisers efficiency, like auto population and getting the data to auto populate into the subject property, into your
Mm-hmm.
comparable, the sales grid, right? Getting that information to auto populate is going to eliminate, I think, the need to manually enter this information or want to create templates so that you have to like copy the information over and over again. And to
Yeah.
Evelyn's point, like we will have like certain, common responses and based on property type, some information that you'll be able to save in your profile and carry over. So instead of it being a one-to-one, we're going to be breaking it up into sections so that you can still keep that data integrity that Pete just referred to. That's a great point. All right, so are you guys ready for the next one?
Always.
Ready?
Always. Clipboards. I'm used to taking a clipboard to inspections. Can I still gather my information that way and enter it into Workbench later? This brings up such an interesting topic and
Yeah.
clipboards, right? But it's useful. Appraisers use it. It's a tool that's being used on a regular basis. What does that look like for appraisers now moving into more dynamic tools? Evelyn, I mean, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I mean, obviously working for a software company we want to encourage you to use the tools that we're creating. But I will say this narrative that you can't do that anymore, it's not necessarily true. You can absolutely
Agreed.
still follow, your preferred inspection process. Mobile app is definitely going to help with field data collection, but it's certainly not required as you get started as you're going through it. And we're working on our mobile app as well to make sure that you guys have access to that, and it syncs up within Workbench. But I mean, no fluff. Short answer, no. You can still use the clipboard if that's what you want to do. We'll have more efficient tools for you from a technology perspective that you'll be able to use as well, if that's your preference.
Good
But you
point.
get the
Good point.
choice, right? We talked about this a little bit earlier. I can't remember who it was on the call on the team. It's like, our name is the appraiser's choice. And at the end of the day, you should get the choice for which one you prefer to use. It's up to you. It's your workflow.
That was like a yeah, marketing. They're gonna give you some gold stars for that one. But that is a great point, right? It doesn't matter. You can use whatever tools work best for you. I think the most
Right.
important thing is that you're collecting the information that's needed specifically for UAD 3.6. And
Yeah.
that's where I think there might be a bit of a gap. So Pete, for appraisers who do still prefer a clipboard, what do they have to start thinking about as they prepare for inspections under UAD 3.6?
Well, I mean, I think a clipboard's fine. I mean, I've got a whole bunch of clipboards laying around my house, but I got a smartphone and a tablet and things like that as well. So it just depends on what the appraiser wants to use. I think what they need to think about is really data capture and the different data requirements for the 3.6 report. There's a whole bunch of different things that you might not think about if you're just walking into this blindly, going out to your first inspection, and have it familiarize yourself with the report and the data and the requirements. I've got a few different things. They're going to have to remember if they're working with a mobile app, the mobile app is going to walk them through the inspection process. If you're working with a clipboard, you're going to have a checklist of sorts or commit to root memory what the requirements are for the 3.6 report. So, a couple things. Front door elevation, there's distinct exterior quality ratings that you're going to need to capture. You need to know where the core heating system is located, whether that's above grade or below grade. You need to think about estimating the age of the roof, continuous and non-continuous finished areas. There's some more details regarding the interior data. It gets a little bit more specific there, thinking about kitchens and bathroom details. They're required for each kitchen and bathroom, not just overall. Appraisers are going to need to know the wall and ceiling heights. They need separate unit details and descriptions really for ADUs. They're going to need to identify probably the defects a little bit differently. They need to identify where it is, what it affects, what actions recommended. I think a lot of appraisers do that today, but it's not necessarily required in the current reporting format. So, I mean, a clipboard can certainly still be used, but more data needs to be captured, and you really need to be familiar with what is required in order to avoid return trips. Nobody likes return trips, not appraisers, not borrowers, and not lenders.
That's a great point. And the next question that we have queued up here, it is pretty similar. And I think, Pete, this is going to be a great one to maybe just elaborate a little more on, and that is related specifically to the inspection. So we're talking about clipboards and tools, right? And we encourage appraisers to use whatever tool works best for them. But there are some different data elements that are required, to your point, right? Elevation and just some additional fields that the appraiser will need to make sure that they're collecting that information so they don't have to make those retrips. So I guess the question here is, am I still collecting the same basic information I collect today, or are there new things that I need to make sure I capture for UAD 3.6? And Pete, you touched on this briefly, but is there anything that you'd like to elaborate here?
Yeah, there's a whole host of new things and a whole host of new things to sort of be thinking about. I would be thinking about that, the front door elevation. Nobody has been doing that. for the last, 30 years. Now that's required in the report. Wall and ceiling heights. Well, some people may do that. Probably most appraisers aren't. I think, taking a lot more photos than you ordinarily might take will be a good idea. It's not that they're necessarily going to be needed in the report, but you can go back to those photos and refer to them in case you actually miss some data. Site influences, we need to think about site fluences a little bit differently than we did before. There's more detail required, such as the proximity of a particular site influence, views. They need to know the range of the particular view. So maybe it's a little bit residential and a little bit something else. They're going to need you to describe that in a little bit of a different detail. I think about street types. There's a whole bunch of different street type options in 3.6, and the appraisers need to know what those mean. I don't necessarily know if you need to know what it means when you're at the inspection, but you certainly need to know what it is when you're making the selection on the form. There is a bonus in terms of the inspection, not of the subject, but of the comparable sales. You don't necessarily need to photo the comps yourself, but you do need to have a clear and descriptive recent photo of the comp. But I will caution appraisers in that while you may not need to drive by the comparable from a requirement standpoint, we as appraisers still need to research, verify, and analyze adequate and reliable data, which might mean you need to drive by some of the comps yourself if you don't have adequate, reliable data from MLS or whichever source you use. So those were a few things.
You're great, Pete.
You.
Yeah. Always love whenever we have you here on the show.
Well,
all right. Well, we only have a couple of minutes left. So I do want to just kick out one more question. And Evelyn, I think this one will be more so for you.
Sure.
And then not sure if we have time for some live Q&A, but hopefully we did capture a lot of the questions that are coming in through the chat. But Evelyn, so this came in as an email to workbench@aciweb.com, and we've seen it a couple of times actually. So when you say Workbench is internet-based, does that mean I have to be online the whole time I'm working on a report? So maybe just touch briefly on what cloud-based is, because this session today is about Desktop 2.6 and
Sure.
Workbench 3.6. So what does that mean for an appraiser? What's the difference there?
Yeah, absolutely. Cloud-based does mean that you need to have access to the internet, right? For you to be able to go through and do this. And we're working on having offline, support. That way your data just syncs up, because there's going to be those spots. I know there are a lot of folks who are in very rural markets. It's like, look, that's great, but my power goes out a lot, or my internet goes down a lot. I need to be able to still do my job efficiently. So, but cloud-based truly means you need to have internet access in order for you to do it, right? Because it's not on your desktop. It's not a program that you've downloaded. You're not running updates for anything with Workbench. It's literally in the cloud. So yes, right now, you do have to have access to your internet to work through it. But we are going to add offline capabilities and support. That way things sync up and you just keep flowing as normal, and things will go right into the cloud as soon as you do get that internet connection. There are certain things that you just have to be connected to the internet, right? If we're linking up data, right? We're running through DT API. That's not going to work offline at all. We need to have internet connection for that. But it's just a lot easier for us to get y'all updates this way as well. There's nothing for you to run to change on your side. When we push a change, you just have it. We don't have to email you and tell you run your web updates. It's just in production for you to go ahead and use. So, right now, yes, you got to have internet access, but we're working on offline support.
Thank you. Thank you. So I guess go ahead and get things wrapped up. But before I do want to throw a quick question at Pete. Pete, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to share with this audience today that you wanted to perhaps touch on?
I would say, well, I would say that people really need to start getting into Workbench and start poking around with it
Mhm.
and really start thinking about, okay, I am going to be using this in the future. I don't want day one to be a complete catastrophe. So a little bit of preparation now is going to pay dividends in the future. So I would really encourage anybody on this call to, you know, activate their profile, get in there, start poking around, create some test reports, and get that hands-on familiarity so that that first report that you do isn't a complete nightmare for you.
That is excellent advice. Avoid the nightmares and catastrophes.
Right.
All right, so that brings us to the end of today's session. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Pete, for being here. It's always a pleasure whenever
Absolutely.
you join us. And we have such a fantastic turnout when you join us, too. I can just see
We
like
do.
we have all these, yeah, we have such a large audience when you're here. Our next session is Thursday, June 11th, and it's going to be another packed house. So, Pete, you're going to be coming back here as another
We
special
will.
guest with us in 2 weeks. Awesome. But you're going to be joined by two other appraisers from our Innovation Council, which I've
Yes.
been so excited to bring them on board. I mean, we've been working with these guys for the past couple of years to
Yeah.
design Workbench. So it's going to be really great to have them join us. And they're going to be going through an actual URAR in Workbench. And we're going to be talking about what that progress looks like, what that process looks like for them, and just how we can help appraisers stay organized as they go from start to finish creating the new URAR. So please come back and join us Thursday, June 11th. And as a reminder, all sessions are recorded and posted on aciweb.com. So if you needed to bail early or you're not able to make it, head over to our website. You can always find a recorded session there. And as always, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again on June 11th.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Thanks,
Thank
Pete.
you.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you. See you next month or next couple of weeks.
2 weeks, 2 weeks.
See you then.
Have a good evening, y'all.